Hello, hello, hello. So share this. We have an amazing guest tonight on the Cynthia Manion Show. We welcome a true powerhouse in leadership, business, and personal development. Larry Broughton. From serving as a Green Beret to becoming an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author, keynote speaker, Larry has built a career helping high achievers and businesses defy the odds and reach their full potential. Named one of LA Weekly's top 10 speakers in North America, Larry has appeared on CBS, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, and Travel Channel's Hotel Impossible, sharing his expertise in leadership, peak performance, and entrepreneurship. As the CEO of Broughton Hotels, he has built a thriving hospitality business and has been recognized with honors as Entrepreneur of the Year and Venturepreneur of the Year, among many, many more that you can read about in that new website on X, MetConnect.
Connect.
Yes. Thank you. Larry believes in living a life of significance, not just chasing success, not at all, but making a real impact and his legacy for going forward and beyond. And tonight, he's here to share with you how you can do the same. Get ready for an incredible conversation. Welcome, Larry Broughton.
Hello, Cynthia. How are you?
Woohoo, woohoo, woohoo.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. And the first person I want to thank is Mr. Jeffrey Wolf. I don't think he's on yet. I don't know if he's coming, but that's okay. He connected us. He was telling me a story about an amazing time that he had, because I'm not sure if he was late for having coffee with you or he forgot about having coffee with you. And he set up another appointment to have coffee with you. And he got there before you in his ghillie suit. And he was hidden down behind the cars and jumped up. And you had such a belly laugh. You couldn't believe it. You had to hold on to the car. You were laughing so hard.
Hey, thank you, Jeff Wolf. He is one of the consummate connectors, which is probably a lesson in that. But yes, for those who don't know what a ghillie suit is, you've probably seen them on any of these war movies. These are the suits that snipers wear oftentimes, where they blend in with the environment. So yeah, he showed up to coffee wearing a ghillie suit one time. Yes, it was very funny. And I literally I fell back against the car. I was laughing so hard. Yeah, it was great.
Talk about going the extra mile.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So Jeffrey Wolf, we love you. Thank you so much for the connection. Yeah. It was amazing, Larry, when I was researching you and I found out, I can't believe we hadn't met before, because there's so many people we know.
I know. We really do.
I turned on, and then you were doing an interview with Mr. Barber, Phantom of the Opera, and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. And I said, Jeffrey, did you tell me I was having Larry on? Because how?
Yeah.
It was so funny. Craig Doswat and Ken Walls and Glenn Morshower is my acting teacher.
Oh, is that right?
When Melissa called, I was like, oh, I'm on with Glenn Morshower.
It's such a small world. Yeah. Those are all great people that you'd mentioned. Craig Doswalt, James Barber, Glenn, Ken Walls. We got another mutual friend who just transitioned a couple of months ago, Bob Donnell. Yeah. So I'm glad that we finally had a chance to meet. So thanks, Jeffrey.
Yes, Jeffrey, thank you so much. Yeah. You often say that success is a byproduct of living a life of significance. So how did your time as a Green Beret shape that philosophy, Larry?
Oh, gosh. As a Green Beret, how did it shape it? Well, I think it really got shaped after that. I really didn't understand what the concept of what real success was. I'd had some successes in my life. Don't get me wrong. I did okay in the martial arts arena. I did okay in high school. And clearly I had some levels of success. If you're going to get into the special operations community, that's going to get you there. But where I started seeing that people started chasing success just for the sake of chasing success was in the business arena. In the entrepreneurial arena, people were getting seduced by the dollar, by fancy cars, by fake Rolex watches. And then when Instagram came around, you see these, excuse the language, knuckleheads driving around with this fake cash in the front seat, and people were getting seduced by this success thing. And I, frankly, got a little bit seduced by the ego that went into achievement after achievement after achievement. But if that's all you're chasing, I just have found through my own experiences and through the experience of working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mentees at this point, is that you'll ultimately drive your life off a cliff, if not literally, proverbially, and that if all you're chasing is business success,
Mhm.
you leave your family behind, you leave your friends behind, you leave your community behind. And so I had a bit of an awakening a bunch of years ago after reading a book, I think it's by Bob Buford, called Third Half, I think it was.
Hmm.
I just realized that if you play a significant role in the lives of your family, I mean, you are there for your significant other, your spouse, your children. If you're there in your community, serving your community, if you're there for your friends, if you're there for your teammates, and you're really serving your investors and clients, success is the byproduct of that. I'm not just, and so I used the word in there intentionally. It's serve first. And that is kind of antithetical to what you see online in a lot of these success gurus. It's take, 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 get, get, get. But I have had a lot, I've lost a lot, had a lot of ups and downs in my life. And I've realized that when I am serving other people, when I'd have no idea what else to do, but I serve first, somehow the moon and stars align for greatness. So I would just encourage people, seek a life of significance. Success will be the byproduct.
We have some fans here. Hello, Jake. Hello, Darlene. Hello, Patricia.
Oh,
Thank
wow.
you so much for joining us. And I have a sister in the Air Force. She just retired, 27 and a half years, full bird colonel.
Awesome.
And I always have treasured her challenge coins. And I know that you have a very good challenge coins. Hers says, thanks for serving wholeheartedly.
Mm.
And what you carry a special forces challenge coin.
I
Hey,
do.
Dan.
I
And
do.
you carry 3 things in your pocket.
I carry a bunch of things in my pockets. If I ever got hit by a bus and somebody had to go through my pockets, they'd think I was a 6-year-old boy.
That's
they,
the best.
they keep adding up. Yeah, I carry. So I've got my challenge coin here. This is my time in Special Forces, and it reminds me of the heritage. Like, where did I come from? On whose shoulders am I standing? Who helped me get to where I am today? And I don't think enough of us look back. We're so self-centered sometimes that we forget that we wouldn't be here had it not been other people who had blazed the trail before us, right? Without getting too gross, I tend to carry, I'm basically addicted to these breast strips. Those are little mint things. But I also carry a little pewter globe that reminds me of my mission,
I
my
love it.
future, the legacy I'm going to leave behind, which is
I
making
was wondering how you carried a globe in your pocket. It's so
That's
petite.
it. It's a little tiny globe. It's got all the continents on it, but it reminds me of my commitment, my mission to put my dent in the world through entrepreneurship and leadership. Okay. Another thing I've started carrying about 3 years ago is a tiny little rubber duck. I actually carry two with me at all times. And this is in commemoration of my son. My son transitioned 3 years ago. He was an amazing, amazing young man. I won't bore you with all the details, but I'll just say that he was an amazing young man and impacted more people than most adults that I know. He was 17 when he transitioned. So I carry 2 because sometimes you see a barista, someplace, or a valet person, or you see someone who's just in the service industry and they're getting ground down, just by people not being very kind to them. And just to make someone smile, if somebody is kind to me in a parking lot, I'll knock on the window and give it just to make you smile. And that's it. And people usually light up with that. So so anyway, my pockets are just full with stuff these days.
Adore it. And it makes it more fun. Life is here to be fun.
Yeah.
I wrote a book. I wrote a couple books, but one of them is Black Pearl, Love Letter to the Ocean, about a mermaid. So I picked you up a little mermaid.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I will send that to you. And
Oh,
I got your assistant, Melissa, and I heard she has purple hair.
She does.
So I'll send those.
You are very sweet. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. That's very thoughtful. It's interesting because people have heard this thing about the rubber ducks. because my son also collected rubber ducks. I'll tell you a quick story. My
Please.
son was wise beyond his years. And people always told me that. His teachers told me that. The parents of his best friends would always tell me like how wise this young man was, even even when he was, single digit age. But he was
Mm.
also a bit of a prankster. And so he was supposed to go to summer camp one year, and I go into his room, and he's got literally 1,000 rubber ducks he had ordered off of Amazon. And his idea was that he was going to get up in the middle of the night one night and put 1,000 rubber ducks in this little pond at the summer camp that he was going to be at. It's like, well, why would you do that? Well, just because he wanted to see people laugh and try to, he could hear in his head all the clamor about, oh, where all those rubber ducks come from. And so all his friends knew about it. And so he was a big rubber duck fan. And so that has kind of lived on. So a lot of people have sent me a variety of rubber ducks from New York City and angel ones. And I'd never seen a mermaid one. That's going to be very unique. So I guess I'm taking on his tradition of having a rubber duck collection. I've got them all in a little cabinet in my living room right now. So thank you. That's very thoughtful of you.
What fun. Makes you smile.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the biggest leadership lesson you learned in the military that entrepreneurs can apply?
Listen, the biggest leadership lesson. I don't know if there's one leadership lesson. I'll tell you this. I put together over the years an acrostic. I'm not the smartest dude out there. I'm very observant. I am pretty smart. I get that. I don't want to be too self-deprecating.
Yeah.
But there's an acrostic that I developed, or an acronym I developed a bunch of years ago that helped me remember some of the top leadership lessons that I've learned. And it's Mitch, M-I-T-C-H. And the first one is motivation. Motivation is the driving force behind any successful leader. I think we can all agree on that. It's the attitude of I get to, right?
Mhm.
I get to get up in the morning. I get to go serve people today. I get to deal with my clients today. Not that I have to, oh, woe is me, I got to get up today, right? The I in Mitch is integrity, because integrity is the foundation of trust, right?
Mhm.
It's crucial to understand that motivation without integrity is dangerous. There's a lot of highly motivated people who lack integrity who are in prison or should be in prison, or maybe they're in politics. I don't know which. But the T in Mitch is tenacity, right?
That's good.
Which is it's relentless pursuit of goals despite the obstacles, right? How many people do we know that are highly intelligent, but when the going gets tough, they quit?
Mhm.
Happens all the time, right?
Right.
And so one of my mantras is, tenacity eats talent for lunch. So we have motivation, integrity, tenacity. The C in Mitch is courage. Courage is the backbone of any effective leader. So Larry, what do you mean by that? Well, in the Army, there was a saying that's on a plaque or a monument at West Point. And part of that says, choose the hard right over the easy wrong.
Yeah, I like that one.
All right, so think about this. The hard right, what does that mean? All right, how would your relationship with your most beloved be had you had the difficult conversation instead of sweeping it under the rug? What if you don't cook the books? What if you tell the truth in every business transaction that you have,
You mean
right?
you
What
don't?
if you speak truth and love more often? That takes guts. It takes courage to have those conversations, right?
Mhm.
And then the H in Mitch, you got motivation, integrity, tenacity, courage, and then humility, right? Humble leaders recognize that they don't have all the answers. They just don't. And so they need to have access to them, though. That's the truth, right? And so these most effective leaders are those who are willing to learn from others. They're willing to take sage advice from other people instead of pretending that they know all the answers. I see this all the time. There are some people that are in leadership positions. If they don't know, they wing it. And that's a terrible approach to leadership. So MITCH. That's what I got for you on that from Special Forces. Now, granted, the Green Berets, when you're in the special operations community, it's a different animal than the conventional military, which I didn't serve any time in the conventional military, so I don't know that. But there's a ton. I need to write a book on just that topic, lessons from the Green Berets. but I've
Mhm.
done keynotes on it, but that's generally the leadership stuff I talk about.
That's probably a great book. I can't wait to get it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, we've got Victory. There's a couple of books. Eric, can you put up Victory with a very interesting cover?
You picked up on that, huh?
Ah, yeah, that you pretty much designed yourself, and then you got your guys to do it, right?
You have done your homework. Yeah, like I was the publisher's graphic guy wasn't hitting it. I hired my own graphics guy to try to come up with a cover that captured it, and they weren't getting it. So finally, listen, I was a political science major at school, at university. I went to the Defense Language Institute and studied Russian for a year. And
Yeah.
so for those political scientists out there, you'll recognize this. This is a famous poster from the Soviet era. Okay, this is a communist Soviet propaganda poster where it says "Victory Now." It used to say Pravda, which was the national newspaper in the Soviet Union, right? So the idea of this book, Seven Revolutionary Strategies for Entrepreneurs, it's basically a finger in the eye to communism and socialism. It's a call to arms for entrepreneurship, and I go step by step on how to be an effective entrepreneur. There's people have told me that the introduction and the 9th chapter, called Freedom Road, are the best chapters of the book. This is the 2nd edition of this thing, by the way. I'm working on a 3rd edition to this as we speak. That they say that the introduction and Freedom Road are the best parts of the book, because Freedom Road talks specifically about planting your flag, right?
Mm.
And that entrepreneurship and capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty over the last 30 or 40 years than any government program ever launched around the world. And you can't deny the facts. Everything is, I've got all the stats in the book from surveys and studies that have been done. But I wrote the book, Cindy, because it just seemed like there were a lot of books on entrepreneurship out there that were written by folks who weren't entrepreneurs, who hadn't been in the battle, or hadn't been in the battle in a long time.
Hmm.
And so, like, right, because a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with in entrepreneurship today isn't even, well, what we're dealing with 20 years ago isn't relevant today, right? So, yeah, thank you for showing that book. I appreciate it. But it's funny that you picked up on the cover. Yes, Soviet propaganda poster.
It's so good. It's so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I ordered it. You can order this book and
Oh,
others on Amazon.
mhm.
Mine's coming on Friday, as a matter of fact.
Right.
But I did get Melissa to send it to me so I could read. You got very good endorsements too on the
Oh
front with
yeah.
Bob Barker and
J.J. Ramberg.
yeah,
Yeah.
very impressive.
Let's see here. Darren Hardy, former publisher of Success Magazine. Anthony Melchiori. Yeah, there's a lot of really good testimonials. In fact, J.J. Ramberg, who had the TV show on MSNBC called Your Business, I think for 11 years, she wrote the foreword. Anthony Melchiori, who's from the travel channels, Hotel Impossible and 5-Star Secrets, he wrote the afterword for it. So, yeah,
Oh,
it's been very, very well received.
pick it up, guys, because it's
Yep.
it's a good one. And then if you need the workbook, it's not the workbook. It's what is it? Put up the little blue one,
All right,
please,
so
Eric.
that's called Flashpoints for Achievers. That was the first book I did. And what I used to do when I really got into personal development, I started writing down little quotes and little thoughts that came to mind, or if I was formulating an idea, I'd always carry around something like this in my pocket all the time. I call it a wisdom journal, and I've got boxes full of these things. And the purpose was just to get clarity on my thoughts. And so I was coaching and mentoring at the time, and so I started putting together. You know what a flashpoint is? It's an accelerant, right? Um, and so I started sending these little, what I called flashpoints, 130 words, out to my clients. Excuse me, coaching clients and team members in my hotel company. And I was doing a deal. Darren Hardy, former publisher of Success Magazine. Before he was a publisher of Success Magazine, we were trying to put together a hotel project together. And so he got on the list somehow. And so he started getting this, and he was on the list for a long time, became publisher of Success Magazine. So we got on a phone call one time, and he said, Larry, he goes, I'm inundated with emails. And I thought, oh no. He said, I'm inundated with emails. I thought he was going to say, please don't send me those things anymore. And he said, I got to tell you, I've got one folder on my desktop of the emails I keep, and they're your flashpoints. You need to put them into a book. I thought, okay, Darren, you're just being nice,
Mhm.
And then I was on a show that used to be on CNBC called The Big Idea with Donnie Deutsch. And so they called and scheduled that. And during their research, like you were doing, Cindy, they got a hold of some of these flashpoints. And Donnie, the host of the show, said to me, he said, I've never seen anything that's this succinct and this powerful over and over again. He said, you hit it every single time. You need to put these into a book. And one of my mantras has always been, if you hear two or more people tell you the same thing, listen up.
Action.
Right? All right. Darren Hardy, Public Success Magazine, high achiever, right? Donnie
Right.
Deutsch. We know who Donnie Deutsch is, right? High achiever. I thought, all right, I need to listen up. And so I finally sat my butt down and wrote a journal where I have 365 daily missives. And it gives you an opportunity to reflect. So it asks you, what did you get out of this? And then what are your intentions for the day?
Mhm.
What are your reflections and what are your intentions for the day? And it just takes about 7 minutes each morning. Because think about this. Okay, here's what I read. Now I'm going to reflect on it. How often do we even do that? Most of us don't take time to reflect on what we just read. We read it, and then maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't. But these studies, Cynthia, you've seen this, right? When you take pen to paper, something happens. It's different than typing. It's different than anything else. But when you take a pen and you write it out, here's what I'm reflecting on this thought for the day. And now here's what my intentions are with this information. Boy, the trajectory of your life changes. So that's the intention of Flashpoints. So it's a long-winded answer, but that's a pretty powerful book. And listen, there are nonprofits. I know 2 different Fortune 50 companies who've used this in their C-suite in their weekly meetings, right?
Sweet.
So it's a pretty powerful book.
Highly recommend it. And
Thank
any
you.
book that you do, by the way, hey,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
you live by the phrase leaders eat last. What does that
Yeah.
mean in business and leadership? I've always followed that also.
Yeah. I've got my Boy Scout leader. I was an Eagle Scout, and I remember him saying he was an Army lieutenant in the Korean War. Actually, I think he might have been a captain. But I remember we were at this. I think it was called Wolf Creek Scout Camp, and I was just a young teenager. And so it was time to eat. It was a winter camp. I do remember that. So we were in this cabin, and it was time to eat. And some of these other patrol leaders like jumped to the front of the line because they were the older kids. And he said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And he pulled all the leaders to the side and said, "No, leaders eat last. You serve these other people first.
Mhm.
We get the scraps, right?" That is still today counterintuitive for a lot of people. There are a lot of people think, "Hey, I'm the higher up I go, the less I work." No,
The
no, the
more
higher.
you work, the more you
Yeah,
work.
yeah, certainly the more responsibility you have for sure, right? Yeah,
Set an example.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What was your transition like from the military service to entrepreneurship? I know you had a lot of challenges there.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. Um, let's see here. So I went from Special Forces A team. These are guys, there's 12 guys on the Special Forces A team, all above average intelligence, pretty high IQ. We don't need to go into that. These are all very smart guys, type A personalities, hard chargers, experts in their field. So everywhere you look, there are type A personalities, just go-getters, right? And so I get out, and my first job out was as a night auditor at a no-tell motel in San Francisco in the Tenderloin. For those who don't know, the Tenderloin is one of the ghettos there in San Francisco. Lots of drugs, lots of prostitution. Um, but it was a job, it paid me $5 an hour. And the idea was that I would go in at 11 o'clock at night, get off at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to school, go to university or college during the day, and then work out, sleep, do the whole thing all over again the next day.
So repeat.
And I tell you, it was miserable. because I was working with people who were just phoning in their performance. And it drove me crazy. And I was going to school, going to College of San Mateo, and I was driving. I still remember this old beater maroon Dodge Aries. It was an Aries, some kind of Dodge. And I was pulling on a campus where there's Porsches and Ferraris and a real sense of entitlement. So it was like, what am I doing? Everywhere I look is mediocrity and entitlement, and it was driving me, it really drove me crazy for a while. And I mean, like really bad, like depressed, bad, like bad thoughts, bad.
Mm.
And so I had to like snap out of it and start surrounding myself with folks who had, the same drive that I had. We've all heard that the famous quote by Jim Rohn, right? You become the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Mhm.
And that became so evident to me at that point, because all these people that were around me, and by the way, I was living in a studio apartment, right? It was a dive of a studio. It stunk. I mean, I don't even know how small it was. It was tiny. And there were 3 of us living there, right? Now, I was sleeping there during the day. I never saw the other guys because they were out working during the day and partying at night. And anyway, but it was pretty miserable, right? So it wasn't a good transition at first, but I was able to kind of take control and get very selective about who I was hanging out with. And by the way, I decided just because these other people are slacking, that doesn't mean that I'm going to slack. I'm still going to show up like it matters. I'm still going to serve. I'm still going to be a top performer. And because of that, an investment group came in to buy this place and renovate it and turn it into what was considered one of the first boutique hotels in the country. They recognized my capabilities, I guess, and said, "Hey, we want to keep you on." Virtually everyone else was let go. Not everyone, but mostly. And so I stayed on while I was going to school. And then ultimately I became a partner in that hotel company. And so it wasn't easy. I'll tell you that. It wasn't easy. But the lesson there is, hey, persevere, right? You have to put one of my favorite sayings, you have to put one dusty, bloody boot in front of the other. Some people say, oh, put one foot in front of the other. Fine. Put one foot in front of the other. But for me, when I think a dusty, bloody boot, I have a very clear image in my head what that means. You will grind it out. It will be difficult. It might even try to break your spirit, but you must persevere. This is where tenacity and resilience comes in, right? And you only get stronger in those 2 fields. And grit is by facing the challenges, not retreating, not curling up in the fetal position. If you do have to curl up in the fetal position, give yourself a few hours or a couple of days, but you can't stay there.
Right.
You can't stay there. You have to get back out. You have to get back out on the field. So
brings you to gratitude.
Yes. Gratitude is, I almost got emotional there. Gratitude is a saving grace, right? I believe in gratitude so much. Each morning we do a morning stand-up ever since the pandemic, because we used to have our office in Anaheim in a beautiful office space. And so we saw each other every single day. But when the pandemic hit, we went remote. And so my leadership team now works remotely. We see each other in person from time to time, but we do daily stand-up calls. They don't take any more than 10 minutes each morning. And the intention of these stand-up calls is just to do a check-in, right? From a business perspective, it's like, okay, what'd you accomplish yesterday and what do you get accomplished today, right? There's that component, of course. But and it's just a round robin, and we don't talk. If you get on early, fine, we can talk about, your dog or whatever crafting thing you want to do beforehand. But when the clock ticks, when that thing is supposed to start, it starts. And there's no small talk. It's just, what are you grateful for? So people go through what they're grateful for. They give their list. Some people have standard ones that they say every day. I've got some standard ones that I say each day. And then depending on what's going on with certain projects, or if somebody really had some extra hustle, I talk about that. And then we say, here's what I accomplished yesterday, and here's what I'm going to accomplish today. It's very quick. And if people need to do sidebars afterwards, they do. I'm not a fan of these regular meetings that go on for 45 minutes or an hour. I don't like those at all. So, but gratitude, I think, is very important.
What time is your meeting?
9 o'clock. So people start a little bit early. I mean, generally people are working in my company at 8:30,
Mhm.
so they check their email and that kind of thing. And so if there's a hot topic they need to bring to the 9 o'clock, then they do that. So, this pandemic thing rocked the world. It rocked our industry, especially here in the U.S. That no industry. This is not me saying this. This is all economic indicators point to the hospitality industry was hurt worse than any other industry out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have favorite restaurants that, I don't know if like 20, I think it was almost 25% of the restaurants across the U.S. have never reopened. Think about that. These are mom and pop businesses, right? 25% of the hotels in markets like New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco. I'm missing a market in there. There's a fifth one in there. Anyway, still have not reopened. Okay. So this is big deal. And so we are all kind of in a world of hurt. And so, I don't know, we were probably into it for a month, and people are getting onto our calls. I'm talking to clients, both coaching clients and investors and of ours and hotel owners that we worked with. And I came up with a mantra to offer grace, patience, and forgiveness freely and often.
It's a good one.
And every word in there means something. And I mulled this thing over for a few days. Grace, patience, and forgiveness. We can do that oftentimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Freely. Can we do that freely? That's a hard one.
Sometimes.
I'll offer you grace if you do this for me.
Mm.
People do this. There's a lot of people who offer conditional patience and love. They just do. There's a lot of people who do it, right? But I believe now, if we offer grace, patience, and forgiveness freely and often, over and over again, because there's going to be times when I'm going to make the same mistake, or I'm going to say to you, here's my commitment. I'm going to fall short sometimes, right? Now, you got to obviously, you can't let people abuse you because of this, right? You can't let people take advantage of you. But I think if all of us were offering grace, patience, and forgiveness freely and often, our lives would probably feel a lot more harmonious.
What a world it would be.
Yeah. It's a great thing to think about.
It's up to us to build it. Eric
Yes.
Roy says, greetings and God blessings to all. Good to be here. Thank you for your service, Larry.
Oh, thanks.
And for being here with our mermaid. Thank you, Eric. He's been dropping some nice nuggets here. He's getting very inspired by you. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
CBS has called you one of the nation's foremost experts on leadership and entrepreneurship.
Wow.
What is the key to becoming an effective leader? Besides all the things we mentioned so far.
Yeah. Well, I think the Mitch thing is pretty darn important. I've seen a lot of folks who have great leadership capacity or ability, but they don't know how to speak effectively. I think if you want to be a transformational leader, you have to be a master storyteller. If you think, the most effective leaders throughout history, they've been able to command an audience, they've been able to inspire people. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, even in the US, right? But FDR was amazing at telling stories. George Washington was an amazing storyteller. Abraham Lincoln was an amazing storyteller, right? They talked about how things could be, how they should be, right? And they could both be inspiring and lead by example. You can't just give platitudes and hollow, give hollow promises. You have to actually show up as well, right? So I would encourage folks who want to live a more bold, impactful life, learn how to tell effective stories, be an effective communicator, do the courageous thing, do the hard right or the easy wrong, and learn how to actually be a great public speaker, right? I think that thing, if you can be a good public speaker, your sales will go up. The way you impact your team will improve. It's just a fact. Now, Larry, I'm an introvert or I'm shy. If you could see me, I am an introvert. Okay. But I speak on stages to thousands of people, but it took work to do it. I have bombed terribly in front of some very influential people
And look
before.
at you now. No more bombing.
Well, no, I mean, I can't think of a time in a long time where I've given like a failing performance, but I'll tell you, there was a time, a bunch of years ago when I knew I wanted to be an effective speaker. I was being invited to speak at hotel conferences, and so I was, and I didn't really know how to be a good public speaker, and so I was copying other people, what they did. Sometimes I was reading my speech. That's no good, right? I'm sure we've all been to conferences and you're like, oh, when is this person going to be done? They're boring, they're monotone, they're whatever. But I didn't know how. And so I was invited to speak at an event where there were some pretty big dignitaries. It was one of those talks where, like the VIPs are sitting on the stage. Have you
Mm,
seen these before?
oh, yeah.
Right. And so I was the big guy. I was supposed to be doing the 40-minute, 45-minute keynote, and these other people were going to be doing like 4, 5, 7-minute talks. And so now it's time for Larry to get up there, and we don't need to go into why, but I get up there on the stage and I have this total flashback, and I bomb. I mean, my voice is cracking, my legs are shaking so hard. I literally had to put my elbows on the podium. Now when I speak now, I don't even get near a podium. I'm moving. There's a lot of energy, but I had to put my elbows on the podium and lean over to hold myself up. And so finally, I just said, just bail. So about 20 minutes into the talk, I wrapped it up and found my way back to my seat. And the guy sitting next to me was the promoter of this event. He's the one who asked me. We were childhood friends. He's the one who flew me out from San Francisco to Pennsylvania to do this talk. And I just looked over at him and I said, Ted, I am so sorry. And he said, are you all right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, good. I thought you were having a heart attack. I was about to call an ambulance. It was that bad. It was that bad. It was very obvious, right? And so I got flop sweat. Was it Broadcast News? I think there's a movie called Broadcast News with Holly Hunter, and I forget the actor's name, but he goes out to be the broadcaster, and he's like sweating profusely where people are calling into the show. It was that bad. That was on a Saturday. I flew back to San Francisco, and on Monday, my hotel company that I'm now a partner in up in San Francisco, I have to give a talk to our top leadership team. Okay, because we were having a leadership summit. So we were away from the office for like 3 days up in Marin County. We had rented a bunch of beautiful homes, and I forget how many people were there, probably 30, 40 people were there. And about half of the team reported directly to me. And now I've got to give the opening remarks at this leadership summit. And guess what's going through my head when I get ready to go out there on stage? Who do you think you are? You're a failure. You just bombed at your last keynote. And so guess exactly, Cindy. So what happened? I get out there and I bomb. I bombed again. Now, most people, I think, would have said, this keynote speaking thing, that's not for me. I'm not going to speak in front of people.
But not you.
I literally, this is without exaggeration, as I walked off, Katie was my assistant at the time. I took Katie by the hand. We walked back down the hall. I said, Katie, I don't care what you do. You have to get me 30 talks in 30 days. I don't care whether I'm speaking to a Girl Scout troop or a prayer breakfast at Denny's. You need to get me 30 talks in 30 days. And she did.
Good.
There were days where I didn't get any talks, but there were a couple of Fridays where I did 3 talks, did a morning talk, a noon talk, and the evening talk. And I learned a few things there. This is where like the tenacity thing came in. I could have just quit. And I know for a fact, I did count it at one point, like the number of people that I've spoken to, the number of TV shows I've been in, the number of interviews I've done like this. Had I just stayed in my shell and said, Cindy, this is not my bag. Millions of people, I never would have written these books. There are millions of people that I would not have positively impacted.
What a waste that would have been.
Right. And so I leaned into what I knew in my heart. God had planted a seed in me. Again, I'm going back to this thing. This is why I have to remind myself sometimes. You made a commitment to impact the world through entrepreneurship and leadership. Is that just empty, hollow words, or do your words have meaning? So thank God for Katie, because she got me those talks. And I learned that I can't pretend anymore. I can't copy someone else. If you're going to do 30 talks in 30 days, you have
Just
to be
you.
flexible. You have to talk about what you know, and you have to show up like it's you,
Uh-huh.
right?
Good for you.
So
And you're
there's a couple of
cured.
teaching points in there somewhere.
That was excellent. So that's another secret for you. You can go talk to everyone. Find out who's in your community, the
Yeah,
Rotary Club, the library. I've read books to children in schools. You can
yes,
just find Toastmasters,
yes,
all the clubs and social events. Just Google it and say, hey, and they will love you because they're looking for, more things to spice up their meetings. It's
that's
an
right.
effort, come up with something. So just reach
Yeah,
out and let people know that you're there in your
I
community.
agree. I think that's a good tip, Cindy. I think you should do that. Yeah, and again, just serve first, and you never know who's watching. You never know who's going to be in that audience,
And what new
right?
friends you're going to make.
Yeah, and listen, we could probably pretty quickly come up with a bunch of stories that we know firsthand where people who had someone not spoken a word of positivity in their life at that specific moment, they would have gone down that path versus that path,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so words have meaning. It's very powerful. And so I would say, if you feel like you've got the seed planted in you somewhere, even an inkling of a message, follow that, right? We talked about Craig Duswalt earlier, a mutual friend of ours, and I was speaking at an event that of his in Dallas, I don't know, several months ago. And there's a woman who I adore in his tribe, and she's been in this tribe for a long time.
Michelle?
What's that?
Michelle?
I shouldn't say her name based on what the top of the story I'm going to share with
Oh,
you right now. But there's a lot of people that have been in his tribe for a long time. Well, it's a good story. You tell me whether I should say the name or not. But she's always kind of been on the periphery. Everyone loves her, and she's got a great message. But part of the problem is she's not been able to step out and actually give a keynote talk or do a sales pitch because she's
yeah.
very shy,
Yeah.
right? So Gail is her name,
Oh,
right? And so she got up on stage for the first time and gave a talk.
good for her.
And it was hard for her, but she was in a safe environment because people knew this. Everybody knew her, right? And so she got up there and she did it. And her confidence level afterwards has spiked. And I've saw her at an event after that. And I've been on a few phone calls, like Zoom meetings with her in a group since then. There's nothing like it when you realize, oh, I've got this message to share with the world, and now I've got the skills to do it. It's powerful. Powerful stuff. So
Zena
to get
Crowder
back,
on
the
here.
question was, what's another leadership tip? Leadership tip: become an effective communicator.
And Zena, you are on here. Hello. Thanks for joining. I've watched Zena go and grow and grow and grow. And now she's doing her own masterminds and is doing
Oh,
a
is that right?
job. Yeah.
Congratulations, Zena. That's awesome.
She is really a little powerhouse. Her and her
Mm,
husband, Chris. Hey, Chris. So you've built these elite teams throughout your career. What
mm.
makes a team truly elite?
Well, high performance, I think, is probably a best way to capture it. Listen, we've all been on teams, I would imagine, that have been like dysfunctional, right? Low performing, they're frustrated. People want to get off the team, right? So as a leader, again, I build these acrostics so I can remember them in my mind. So ELITE, that's how you spell elite, right? And so the first thing is this: if you want to build an elite team, Cindy, you have to evaluate aptitudes of everyone that's on the team. This is where strengths assessments come
Mhm.
in, right? So before I went to the military, there was before anyone goes into the military, your daughter took the ASVAB test, Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's basically an IQ and aptitude test. Like, what are you really good at? Right. So you have to do that. And so what I use in the entrepreneurial space is most often the Colby A Index and the Clifton Strengths Finders. There
Mhm.
are other ones that I've used, but those are the two that I use mostly because they measure, particularly the Colby measures the cognitive brain, not the affective brain, right? Not the cognitive brain, but the affective. How do you reflexively respond to stimuli? So that's E, evaluate aptitude. L, once you know those strengths, you have to leverage them. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Well, make sure that if you're building a team, you have roles and position profiles that maximize those strengths. Studies have shown that the number one reason why people feel burned out, why they hate their job, or they get resentful, It's because they're not working in their strengths.
Mm.
Imagine if every day you went into work and you were working outside your strengths, right? It's a burn. It sucks. It sucks your lifeblood, right? So then imagine if your team, if they're working 65% of the time in their strengths, productivity goes up, positivity goes up. All right. So evaluate aptitude, leverage, then inspire your team. Well, how do you do that? You have to have a clear vision and clear goals. You have to have a vision for your organization and clear goals for each of your team members. People want to know, am I being successful? How do I become successful? Where are we going as an organization? I'm blown away when I go out and talk to audiences, how many people are on teams in an organization. They don't even know what the vision is for the organization. All there is, they're just doing remote, repetitive work, and they don't know where they fit into the organization. Gallup's State of the American Workforce survey shows that 67% of the American workforce is disengaged or actively disengaged. Think about that. 67% of your coworkers are disengaged or actively disengaged. When they peel back these studies, they have shown that the number one reason that they're disengaged is because they aren't being trained. So the T in elite is to train and cross-train people. Most people that are on a team, they feel like it's the leader's responsibility to make them better at their job.
Yeah.
So let's train them. Let's give them opportunities to grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then cross-train them in something else so that they have more opportunities. And then the E is this. Empower. What do I mean by that? Let them do their freaking job. Stop micromanaging. If you hire the right people who have the right aptitude, you get them in the right role in the organization, you've trained them to do their job, do some peer-to-peer mentoring, and then let them do their job and stop micromanaging.
Yeah.
It sucks people's lifeblood to feel like they've got mom or dad staring over their shoulder at everything they do. But ineffective leaders, that's what they think leadership and management is about, is micromanaging. And it's not effective at all.
You have to let them fly. You don't need 5
Let them
Larrys.
fly.
You're
That's
the
so good.
Larry. You need them to come up with new ideas and bring new stuff and have new thoughts. And how about this? How about that? How about this? Let me try this and do it and go, oh, and you go, wow. And give
Collaborative
them
stuff.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like let them fly. Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Kevin, appreciate you being on. How are you? You've worked with the Pentagon, Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies,
Yeah.
Fortune 100 companies, and top entrepreneurs. What's the one lesson you learned or experience that stands out with them? Who's your good lesson for our audience?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, and that is to have the courage to speak up. If I look at, like you said, the Pentagon, Turner Broadcasting, Lexus, any of those organizations, and then entrepreneurial startups, there are generally signs that things are going off course.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, team members lack the courage to speak up, or the leaders lack the courage to take action.
Or the leaders block it, so you're afraid, or fear factor.
Yes.
And you're missing the opportunity, and a stranger can walk in and feel the environment and go, ooh.
That's absolutely right. And I can tell you there have been a couple of large organizations that if I were to say their name, you would know who they are. And when I've done, the consulting gig, I go in and then walk through the environment and just say hi to people. And you're right, you can feel it. If you have any kind of intuition, you can feel what's going on, right? And people that have been there for a long time, they don't feel it because they become immune to it. It just feels, it's like, I don't know. I can't think of a good analogy right now. The only thing that come up, there's a commercial about, what is it? I don't remember, but you can't smell, you're in a stinky environment and all of a sudden you become immune to it. Right. And it's like that a little bit, when you're a fresh nose or a fresh set of eyes and you go in there, you can see it right away. But it's oftentimes courage, the lack of courage. I think that's probably the most common thing that, think about the political arena, think about the business scandals that we've come up with, that we see over the years, or the religious scandals. there's usually people in the organization that see what's going on, but they don't either don't have the courage, or like you say, the leader quells them, keeps them down, right? Um, but all that pain could be avoided if we just had a more courageous work environment, courageous society, perhaps. So courage, I think.
And you need to impact where you're living and working because that's a major part of your life. Don't you want to be happy and engaged and learning and growing and making more money? Because if you do all the things right, that's the
Well, happy is one of those things. You hit on something there that I think is often overlooked in the workforce, and that's love and happiness. There are some countries who do these happiness indexes, right? Um, and was it Burma? They have a national happiness index, right? And Tony Hsieh, the former CEO of Zappos, I interviewed him a couple of times. I don't know if you know.
yeah, he wrote a thing in your book too, a testimonial in your book.
He did. He wrote a testimonial for
Victory.
Victor,
Mhm.
and yeah. So he wrote a book on happiness in the workplace. Sad's Bhutan. Thank you, Patricia. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, Patricia would know that.
Yes.
So
Brilliant.
yeah. So Tony wrote a book. I don't remember the name of it. Maybe somebody can look it up. But it was on happiness, right? The sad part with Tony, like so I'd been around him a few times. I'd actually formally interviewed him on camera a couple of times. But I never felt like this is the guy who's happy,
Mm,
you know. But he led
mhm.
an organization that strived for happiness. Now, as it turns out, for those who know about his passing, yeah, he had a lot of demons that he was dealing with, right? But happiness is a powerful motivator. Positivity is a powerful motivator. Success Magazine did a study, I don't know if they did the study or they shared a study a bunch of years ago, where you could have the best CRMs, you could have the best call centers, you could have the best benefits package. But the thing that moved the needle the most for productivity and profitability was positivity. Think about that. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to spend $100,000 on some new CRM, but I've got a toxic work environment. It's going to make that much of an impact in your
If
organization. And the positivity thing does not cost you anything if you do the work yourself as the leader, right? So actually, I'm right now just hired to do one of the things I do is I do some consulting for organizations. And so I'm going in to do a confidential work climate survey, because at least the board understands that there is this CEO, although very good in some areas, he is not a very good leader. In fact, there's a toxic work environment. And so I'm going in to do a confidential work climate survey first,
mm,
about 40 some questions we ask every team member. I don't call them employees, I call them team members.
mhm.
And then we analyze that and then meet with the CEO, go through it, develop an action plan, and then do a company address. Hey, I've heard you. I've heard you. These are the problems, and here's what we're going to do to make it better. Courage. Courage. Takes guts to do that. Think about this. As a CEO, you got a toxic work environment, and now you're going to say, hey, I get it. This has been really rough. I know that you don't like some of the things I do here. I'm committed to changing. Basically opening up your kimono. It takes guts to do that. Right. So at least now how does it go after that? I don't know, but I've done this, I don't know, a dozen times for a variety of different companies. It usually works, but sometimes people are so set in their ways. There needs to be an absolute awakening,
Mhm,
for whoever's at the top. And
mhm.
sometimes hitting bottom is what causes the awakening.
Well, if you're invited in, obviously they're almost there or they're there
Yeah, that's
already.
right. Exactly.
So
You're
it's gonna
exactly
be great. It's gonna be great. You got this. It's
exactly right.
so much fun, and everyone's gonna be so grateful, and you just
Yeah.
have to stay on top of them and make sure they don't lose it.
That's the key, right? Well, you have to create a new institutional DNA in the
Mhm.
organization. You can want all you want, but
Yeah.
until
You
it is
don't
part of until it's part of the culture, you know, it's not. You're right.
let's talk about your daughter. How's she inspiring
Oh,
you? How is she doing?
My daughter's amazing. You know, my life changed the day that she was born. If anyone's had children, you probably recognize this. I don't know. I used to be this very robotic, um, not very emotive type of guy.
Well,
And
Green
it was
Beret.
maybe good in some areas of my life, Um, but I remember the day that she was born, and I cut the umbilical cord, and I'm the one that I
Oh,
washed her. I mean, I felt bad about this now that I think about it. That I held her before her mom even held her. You know, but I was, set her on, her mom's chest afterwards, but I
oh,
remember seeing her for the first time, and it's like the Grinch who stole Christmas. You know that story
of
when the
course.
Grinch's heart grew 2 sizes that day. That's what I felt like. That was literally how it felt for me. I had no idea. In fact, I'll tell you this. There's a few months, I don't know, a couple months before my daughter was born, I remember saying to my former spouse, who's an amazing woman, who's a great mom, or is a great mom, I said to her, I don't think I'm going to be able to love this baby as much as I love my dog, Madison. I had this boxer, Madison, and I was like, literally, we adored this darn dog. This dog went with us everywhere. And she goes, oh, and she kind of felt the same thing. She goes, I know, like, do we have this much love? Now she was further along the path because, for one thing, she had this baby growing inside of her, right? So she could feel the changes happening. But I literally, back then, to me, love was a zero-sum game. I didn't know if I love this person this much, it means I have less love over here. Sorry, I used to be a Neanderthal, okay? Um, but my daughter's amazing. She's engaged to be married. Like a lot of folks, um, we've got struggles. She's got struggles. I mentioned earlier, my son, her younger brother died 3 years ago, and it crushed her, like it would anyone. It absolutely, and me, but it crushed her. But thank goodness, she's, close to me, close to her mom, has some dear friends who've worked with her through this. She's got an amazing fiance um, who's helped her through. But she's living her best life right now and planning a wedding. So, the funny thing is, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I bet on it, right? And she recognizes that.
And
So
you
thank
did
you for
not
asking. You're a sweetheart.
did not know you could love that much.
I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, it maybe sounds silly to most of your viewers.
Not at all.
I
Not
just
at
didn't
all.
know.
We
I
have
didn't know. I
respect.
didn't know that there was that much capacity. And then when my son was born, it was even just another reminder of it. And I'm glad that I learned that lesson. And
Probably changed your whole life.
completely, completely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It changed the way I do business. It changed the way I coach and mentor people. Because my coaching program used to be all about inventory turn, EBITDA, return on investment, that kind of thing. And because of this, and the lessons I've learned through divorce and everything else is I developed a thing I call the whole health spider graph, where it's 8 spans that we measure, not just on professional growth, not just about profitability, but about spiritual growth, about relationships with your family and friends. So there's 8 different spans, and it's because what I found in my earlier days, or is the before enlightenment and the after enlightenment. Well, not that I'm enlightened, but I mean before the journey began. Um, And I think a lot of people have this problem that when they're succeeding in business and they're killing it, there's a lot of cash flow, there's probably a lot of sacrifice in another part of their life.
Mhm.
And if that sacrifice goes on too long, it starts to harden. I'm just thinking about a spouse, for instance, it hardens their heart. They can only take so much of it. And so there's that mantra, what's measured is improved. And so if we start measuring all these different 8 spans, in their life, then things get better. Right. And so we measure from 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, I guess it is, on each of these 8 spans. And since I've been doing that, My average, so I survey all my clients. My average client does 67% more revenue each year working, I think 15% fewer hours. I've had folks come to me like on the verge of divorce, right? Because it's like I can see my old life in them,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't have to be that way, I guess is my message to people, right?
Patricia says karma.
What's that?
Patricia says karma.
Yeah, it can be a bitch sometimes, but boy, hey, karma has slapped me around the head and shoulders a bunch of times,
And look at
right?
you now, growing up. Malaysia says love helps us heal.
Malaysia's on here.
Yes. And she
Malaysia
also
Harrow.
says, no, Malaysia.
Oh, Malaysia. Got it.
But I'm sure she would say that. But
Maybe.
you've come so far. That's why we haven't met yet. You weren't ready to meet me.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah.
You've been recognized with countless awards and honors, and you probably will get even more now that you're evolving up to a higher and higher layer. You've been recognized for so many countless awards and honors. Which one has meant the most to you, besides
Oh,
getting ready to walk your daughter down the altar to the altar?
that will be the big one. Yes, that will be the best. Um, well, I'll tell you. Yes, Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year. That was pretty great. But I'll tell you, the one that really touched me was I got this one called the National Business Leader of Integrity
Ooh.
Award. So
Mm.
that has been, I think it was the most powerful. Well, first, let me go back. Ernst and Young was pretty great because, it's not something that you can, well, you know how a lot of these awards are, not a lot. There are some awards out there where you pay a fee and you're going to get an award. And it's just, oh, geez. Okay, fine. But Ernst and Young, they interview your CPA, your attorney, clients. I mean, they get into the weeds. They look at your financials, all that kind of stuff, right? So it was pretty great. And I was shocked because my company was not that old at the time. I was still married and we had our entire executive team there. It was a black tie event. And I forget who's the big car auction house. Oh, anyway, there were a lot of the companies were like not bigger. Yeah, bigger than mine, more of a profile, higher profile than mine. But
Sotheby's?
what's that?
Sotheby's?
No. It's two words. Jack is Jackson in the name? Hewlett Jackson? Something like that. Anyway, so we won this award and I was shocked. Absolutely
Fun.
shocked.
How exciting.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had no idea. Like, I didn't prepare anything to say because I got to come on stage and I got to give a little bit of an acceptance thing. It's like, I wasn't even prepared at all. Anyway, but the National Business Leader of Integrity Award, when you have that and you start publishing, hey, we won the National Business Leader of Integrity Award. Guess what? You now have a standard you need to live up to. Now, Dan Cathy, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, got it the year after I got it. Okay.
Woo.
Yeah. And so it's no small little award, right? And so I appreciated that one the most, I guess, because that has been my thing. It's one of our core values, integrity, and that other people were recognizing it. Listen, hey, to live a life of integrity, courage has come up a bunch of times, right? You cannot live a life of integrity without being fiercely courageous.
And truthful.
Well, truthful.
In all
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was the one. Thanks for asking.
Patricia says it sets a benchmark for your future.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey Wolf, for setting us up so I could meet Larry in person. This was an amazing interview. You are amazing, Larry, and I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy
You're amazing.
you're here. Everyone, share this out.
Thanks.
And we thank you for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you all. Be good. Make wise choices.
God bless.